Well, do you guys get any work done on the final cruise? Practicing all of our different methods? Cool. Well, tonight we are going to do a little quick rules of the road if you guys are interested in staying on. This doesn't have anything to do with navigation or taking the US Sailing Certificate navigation course, but I just thought rules of the road are very important and collision avoidance is part of it. So we're going to talk about that. Does anybody come up with anything else they want to talk about? Okay. Well, we'll wait see if a couple more people want to come on.
Bree, I was wondering, for the second class, or Coastal Navigation 2, a lot of you mentioned like things like drift and set and things like that. How much of that is typically done by hand versus using some kind of electronics nowadays?
Like calculating what the tide is? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, just how much is it used as far as like, you do a lot of paper charting typically, or is it more electronic?
No, I would say most people out there do all electronic. And you could plot, LOPs and use all these things and plot them onto a electronic chart. But some people just stop the share there. Some people just assume their GPS is right and will just go with that. So it's always good to know these ways of double checking or checking the tools that you have on board. As far as tides go, no one calculates tides by hand anymore. I don't think that's a thing. I've always done it with tide programs. Nowadays, there's like a million apps that have it that you can use. And some of them you could tie into, depending on what type of electronic plotter you have, you can tie into that. But if you don't have an electronic plotter at all, or don't have power on your phone or iPad or whatever, you have to have the actual tide book to calculate what the tide's going to be. So that's like, oh, well, I have my tide book electronically on my iPad, which you probably have a tide app on your iPad anyways. So I guess my answer is it's an outdated thing, but to test with US Sailing or test with the Coast Guard, we do the longhand way of using the tide tables to calculate what it is. So it's not too bad. It's good to know how to use the tide tables. And for us here, Newport, Long Beach area, I know OCC has, I don't know if they've sent them out to you guys. They're free at the front desk. They're like little books. It's like little pocket tide calculation book thing. So, to know how to use that, to know what it means, kind of all of those little things is what we're going to talk about. So, yeah. All right. Well, let me get to so I didn't want to completely waste this day because I think we went over all of our things that we wanted to for our nav stuff. So I'm going to go over the rules of the road. This is a PowerPoint I do for a workshop. So it's a little bit, let's try to get this shared here. More presentation. Okay, and then this, I'm gonna go big. Okay, you guys see the PowerPoint?
Yes. Is this the workshop that you do with the other 2 workshops?
Yes.
Oh, cool, cool.
So I'm actually, I used to do it, well, we started last year doing it summer months, the 3 weeks of each 3-month summer. This year, I'm actually having a baby in May. So I'm taking June and July off, and I'll get back to it in August. So there's not that many. And I was like, well, I'll just throw this one in here for you guys.
Congratulations, Bree.
Thank you. We're really excited. Okay. So I guess before I get started, other things to think about that I like to talk about at the end of this class is other classes to take, right, at OCC. So if you take CoNav1, then you can get the US Sailing Certificate. Another great class after this one is the electronic navigation. I know it does have limited seating, so I think someone was saying that it's booked up the next 2 or 3 sessions. But again, it's a great class that complements this one. And then I teach the workshops. So I do rules of the road, intro to chart plotting, which you guys don't need, and then a intro to radar. So kind of a radar in a day. If you have a radar, what do all those blips and blobs mean and how to use it for navigation and collision avoidance. And then I also teach celestial navigation, and that's going to start in August.
When does CoNav1 begin?
That starts next Wednesday. So same time, 6:30, same format for CoNav1. And that's what I teach, but I think diesel mechanic in a day is another great one. If you own your own boat and are planning on taking it out, it's always good to know how to fix the engines if anything comes up. I don't know what other ones are out there, but tons of great classes at OCC. Yeah, let's get into rules of the road. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of legal talk, but I'm looking for my rules of the road book. Here it is. You guys should definitely get a copy of Rules of the Road. It doesn't have to be the most up-to-date edition. You can get, a cheap used one that's an out-of-date edition, but the rules are so similar. If it's out to date, it might just have like a couple things that need correction, but not a big deal. You can get a cheap one that's out of date and just have it and be familiar with it. If you are taking a test, you can't use the book, but on board or anything, you want to be able to quickly look up, oh, what do those lights mean? That's what type of thing I'm looking at. So to know how to, navigate the book or understand where things are in the book is a great tool. So be familiar with what. Also, Rules of the Road. I really like this book. It's Rules of the Road by Steve Brown. And it is, it kind of has, or it does have the technical rule on one page and then an explanation like layman's terms. What does that actually mean to you on the other page? So just the actual rule and then what it means to you, kind of explaining it in a more friendlier way than just reading the rules of the road can be very intimidating. So I like those 2 books. Again, you don't have to get the fancy one, but definitely get a cheap copy of this one somewhere. Okay, let's do it. Rules of the road. Why do we need the rules of the road? So when we think about anything of like, should I do it this way or that way, or what really is the rule? Everything about the rule is based in safety. So everything about the rules is going to lead you towards the safer route to do something. So, who has the right of way over who has, should I turn to port or starboard? Should I, follow this traffic separation scheme? It's all based on safety first. So if you can't exactly remember the rule, think about what would be safest and you're probably following the rules. Everyone has to follow the rules. There are international rules and United States rules, but they are for everybody, whether you're a recreational boater, if you're in, a little paddle boat, you're on a commercial vessel, you're military, foreign, everybody has to follow the rules. So just because you're on a sailboat or that is a big, military aircraft, it doesn't mean they don't get, a free pass, get out of jail free card or anything. Everybody has to follow the rules. So keep that in mind. Rules are dependent on the vessel's size, the vessel's type, and the vessel's location. Those are the 3 basic things that give you one rule over another. If you are over 12 meters, so what is that in feet? I thought it was like 32 feet or something. You have to have this book on board. So if you're a smaller vessel, you probably don't have it, but if you're over 12 meters, you have to have this on board and follow it. So talking about collision avoidance, what are the most common things that lead to collision avoidance? Inefficient watch keeping. So that's watch keeping on all vessels. Military vessels tend to have way too many people in the bridge, so watch keeping tends to get a little lackadaisical because people think everybody else is doing it because they have 20 people up there. Commercial vessels typically have 2 people, lookout and a mate. If they're busy getting coffee or something, then they're not doing efficient or effective watch keeping. And then recreationally, the watch keepers tend to be doing a lot of different things. So just keep that in mind. The most effective way to be keeping a safe watch is to actually be looking out the entire time, hearing and checking things the entire time, to be aware and not distracted, which it's very hard not to be distracted. That's just the nature of it. Second one is excessive speed. Excessive speed can lead to collisions. That one's pretty self-explanatory. You want to know the power of your vessel. Oops. So excessive speed is a relative term, right? Excessive speed for a container ship is going to be a lot different than excessive speed for that, yacht or that power fishing boat or something like that. It all depends on your vessel and the maneuverability of your vessel and what excessive speed is. Lack assessment of the situation. So that goes back to that watch keeping, that you just get into a situation that you didn't know all of a sudden is upon you and you haven't assessed it clearly. Makes sense. Lack of early positive action. So that's going to be a term, early positive, what's the other one? Ample action, something like that, that is going to be used a lot. So we want to take, instead of, waiting to the last minute to turn, or speeding up to cross the bow of somebody instead of going behind them, you want to take early action and positive action in a safe way. Passing or overtaking too close. Again, that too close is very relative term. Too close to you might be safe. Too close to somebody else might be a little bit dangerous. So very relative term. Failure to observe the traffic separation schemes. This is tricky with a lot of recreational boats that don't have electronic plotter or charts on board, that they don't know where the traffic separation schemes are, right? They're not actually marked on, they're not, don't have a buoy and a channel. They're not actually marked. They're just traffic separation schemes on the chart that are observed. But, people can be completely unaware of it and just sitting right in the middle of the freeway, essentially, not knowing that they're on the freeway. So, so you always want to know where those traffic separation schemes are. Incorrect lights and signals. You always want to be predictable out there. I say that a lot. You always want to know, what, project out who you are, what you're doing, and be predictable. That way other people can assume that that's what you're doing, okay, and they can stay clear or, treat you in a certain manner. Mechanical failure, negligent maneuvering, those make sense. So those are some factors that lead to collision. To avoid collision, we're going to take early action. We never want to wait to the last minute. We want to take substantial action. So this is where we go into little tiny course changes are no good. You want to make a large course change, even if that means, your ETA is going to be off, or, you're getting off course. You want to make a substantial course change or action, slow down, whatever it is, to avoid collision. And then you want to check that action. Did that course change actually do anything to help me prevent this collision? Did that slow down? Did whatever action I took, did it actually do anything? Or did I just do an action and be like, all right, I turned, I'm good to go, let's move on. So it's kind of this cycle that we go through. We observe the situation, we see that there's going to be a problem, we figure out what action to take, and then we check to see if that action actually helped us. Should we make another action? Do we need to do something else? Are we putting ourselves in a different situation, etc.? And stop if necessary. So when all else fails, hove to or stop. Stopping, again, isn't quite, that easy on a boat. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. So that hove to, or what is it? They call it bare steerage way. That, we're going as slow as possibly we can, still being in control of our vessel. So we don't want to stop and lose control of our vessel. We want to always maintain control, but slow to your minimal speed to give you more time to assess the situation and assess what actions need to be taken. Proper sound signals. we're going to go into sound signals. But if you get mixed up, it can be very confusing. So again, we don't want that confusion out there. We want to be predictable and easy. Okay, so in the book, there are 5 parts. We have general, steering and sailing, lights and shapes, sound and signals, and then kind of all the rest exemptions. So we're going to go through those, but each part, if you look at the table of contents, does anybody have a book with them? Anyways, if you look at the table of contents, each part has certain sections. So I guess the one that I'm really concerned about is our steering and sailing rules. So our part C is steering, or part B is steering and sailing, but we have subparts within that for steering and sailing rules in any visibility, for steering and sailing rules in sight of one another, meaning you can actually see the other vessel, and then steering and sailing rules not in sight of one another in restricted visibility. So we kind of have these rules, and then we have these like subcategories. So it's good to know those, but that's what we're going to get into. Okay, so there are 2 sets of rules. We have the international rules. Those are what we call CoLregs. And then we have the inland rules. So the inland rules are for the United States in inland waters. And that inland water, we're going to go over in a second, but there are slight differences to the inland versus international rules of the road. So if you have the book, international is on one side, inland is on the other. So you can see, just I opened to a random page here, there's a little more detail on the inland rules than on the international rules for Rules 21. So sometimes they're exactly the same, sometimes they're a little bit different. So it's just good to know where you are and what rules you should be following, those inland or international. Again, they're very close to the same, but sometimes just a little bit different. So what we call it is the CoLregs line. So on your chart, you're going to see a big purple line that says CoLregs. And anything inland of the CoLregs line is inland rules. Anything seaward is going to be those international rules. So you always want to know where that line is, just so you know. See, it said CoLregs demarcation line right there. You just want to know where that line is on whatever chart you're navigating on. Okay. Any questions so far? Does that make sense? I know we're getting into little details here, but okay. Now we're going to get into some definitions. So this is under our general, our part A, and we're going to define some of the words that the rules like to use. So we have 2 words, making way and underway. Those are different things. Okay, so underway means 3 things. We're not aground, we're not moored, tied to a dock, pier, or wharf, and we're not at anchor. So underway means we are floating in the water somewhere. We are underway. We're not aground, anchored, or moored. So as soon as you pull those lines off, as soon as you get the anchor off the bottom, you are underway. Making way actually means you are progressing through the water. Whether you're going to stern or forward, you're actually moving in a direction purposefully, not just drifting along unpurposely. So making way is purposefully going somewhere. Your underway is not making way. You're just drifting. You're not actually moving anywhere. You're not anchored. You're not aground. You're not moored, but you're not actually steering or moving your vessel. That's underway, not making way. So 2 things to look at there. Okay, aground. Here are some pictures of aground. You could be aground purposely, or you could be aground not purposely. So aground doesn't mean like bad. Maybe you just wanted to pull up on the beach and, you know, have a little picnic or something. Excuse me. So that's aground. Anchored, obviously, anytime you have an anchor out. And moored is anytime you're moored. Okay. Responsibility, rule 2. There's a lot of little language here, but it basically means be smart and use good seamanship. So in that, be predictable, use good seamanship. We want to be responsible, respect others. The whole wake rule falls under this category. We don't want to create a wake that causes damage to property or people. We just want to use good seamanship. And again, you know, that good seamanship is interpreted different ways, but rule 2 responsibility is use good seamanship, essentially. Okay, if you depart, or if you must depart from the rules to avoid immediate danger. So this is kind of that caveat that says you must follow all these rules, but you can and you must not follow these rules in order to avoid danger. So every mariner must act to prevent collision. You can't just be like, oh, well, I had the right of way, so I was just chugging along, doing my own thing, and they hit me. Or like, they rear-ended me, it wasn't my fault. It is everybody's fault all of the time. Both parties are to be found at fault. So you must depart from the rules. If you are the giveaway vessel, you're supposed to maintain your course and speed. But if the other vessel is not doing what it should, you have to not maintain course and speed, actually do something in order to prevent a collision. So it does give you that, that burden, if you will. Lookout. Lookout is the most important job on a vessel from the Supreme Court. So again, that is prudent lookout is very, very important. Let's get all of these there. Prudent lookout must be maintained at all times, must be trained and experienced. You can't have your 4-year-old out there as your lookout. Maybe you can if he's really experienced. Properly stationed, so your lookout can't be down below. Alert and vigilant, can't be sleeping. So your lookout, pretty important. Got to have a lookout at all times. Use all available means. So that means your lookout can use your radar, or can use, you know, the depth sounder, can use all available means to help them. The AIS is a great tool to help them keep a proper lookout. Use sight and hearing, obviously. Appraise the situation and determine risk of collision. So it's not the lookout's entire responsibility to determine risk of collision. It's more the navigators or the mates. But I guess as someone who has sailed around, you want your lookout to be able to quickly identify which vessels have that risk of collision. And so he or she can bring attention to those vessels instead of pointing out the 100 vessels if you're, approaching San Francisco and there's like a sailing regatta or something, or it's, the Newport Boat Parade and there's just 100 different vessels out there. You want to determine which ones have that risk of collision. Lookouts can use those relative bearings to report. We kind of talked about that in our class here. Those relative bearings to report different boats, different aids to navigation, different things. You could use port or starboard with points, or you could use, the clock. We have somebody at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever you can communicate with the people on board is the best way to do it. Okay, safe speed. This one's super important, and that excessive speed is a very possible risk of collision. So how do we determine what safe speed is? The rules of the road does not say 5 miles an hour. Excuse me, guys, I'm sorry. The rules don't give us a speed limit. They give us safe speed. So that safe speed is very up for interpretation. And they give us guidelines of how we should interpret it. So, visibility. Let's just get them on here. Okay, so visibility. If it's foggy and you can't see very far, you'll probably want to slow down to give you more time to assess the situation around you. Traffic density. If there is nobody around, you could probably go a little faster. If you're in the middle of the Newport Christmas Boat Parade, then you probably want to go slower. So traffic density. Maneuverability. If you can quickly stop, quickly turn, then maybe you can go a little faster. If it takes you a mile to stop, maybe you need to go a little bit slower. So how is your vessel's maneuverability? What's the environment? Is, the swells, the environment around you. Also in that, like, how quickly is that affecting you? Can you slow down fast enough? Background lights. Background lights can be very confusing at night. It's very hard to tell with lights their distance, their relationship, because some lights can be very, very bright, but still very far away. And some lights can be very dim, but very close to you. And it is very deceptive to the eyes. So background lighting can be, you'd want to slow down to give you more time to assess, is that an actual buoy or is that a vessel? What am I actually looking at to help you? And draft. So how deep are you? Are you deep draft vessel, shallow? Then we have more conditions for vessels equipped with a radar. What are the limitations of your radar? Does it only go up to 6 miles? Can it go up to 24 miles? There's hundreds of different limitations. Traffic density. Again, if you have 1,000 little dots on your radar, it's going to take you a longer time to assess those dots to see which ones are, risk of collision or not risk of collision. If you only have 2 dots on your radar, traffic density is low, then it can be a little bit easier to determine risk of collision on those. Range scale, that goes to how far you can see using the, how far the radar can see, 2 miles, 6 miles, 24 miles. Sea state. If it is super choppy out, your radar is going to be reflecting off of the water. the radar waves reflect off of water. So if it's raining or it's choppy out, you're going to get a lot of feedback, and a small boat can definitely hide in that feedback. If it's really choppy out, be like, oh, I think it's just, you know, some waves or something, but there could be a small vessel there. So if it's flat calm, again, it's a lot easier for the radar to travel.
Question regarding radar. In order for your radar to determine if there's like vessels around, do they need to have that radar reflector, or is that not required?
So a radar reflects, there's a kind of good radar reflectors, not like an actual radar reflector, but your type of vessel can help you. I'm not explaining this right. Like, I'm going to say a, you know, car, a ship that carries a bunch of cars is a big metal flat surface, right? It's kind of like a driving parking garage. That is totally going to reflect the radar waves, but a sailboat might not reflect the radar waves aren't really going to reflect off of a sail versus like a metal object. Versus wood, sail are less radar reflective than metal vessels. So it helps if you have a radar reflector on board to really determine like, hey, I am here. If you have a radar, you'll be able to see me. It's not that the radar won't be able to see you. It might be able to, depending on, you know, tuning of the radar and the gain and all of that. But having a radar reflector on board, if you're on a small vessel, definitely helps. That answers your question, but there's lots of different factors that can move around how reflective you are on radar. But that's a good thing to be aware of. Okay. Oh, I didn't get a picture on this. Okay. Rule 7 is talked about a lot, and it is determining risk of collision. So how to determine risk of collision, by definition, is going to be if another vessel is on a constant bearing and decreasing range. So that's CBDR. And let's explain that a little bit. So if I am headed north here and there is a vessel, he's not headed towards me, he's just headed across from me. If he maintains on this relative bearing, a constant bearing, he's still on that bearing, but his range is decreased. He's a little bit closer to me, constant bearing, still getting closer to me, and that would lead to a collision. So constant bearing, decreasing range. If there is an object, or yeah, a vessel, whatever it is, if it is changing bearing, if as you are moving along and it is moving past you, you know, counterclockwise or clock to the right or to the left, whatever you want to call it, if it is changing bearing, it's not going to hit you. You're not on a collision course. If it is constant bearing, you're on a and getting closer. If it's constant bearing getting further away, not collision course. But if it's constant bearing getting closer, then that's a collision course. So it's always good to keep that in mind. You're like, oh, that vessel is, you know, at 8 o'clock. Okay, well, 10 minutes later, they're now at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Okay, they're gonna pass behind me. I don't have to worry about them. Or if they're in the same relative bearing, then hey, I might have to assess what that guy's doing. Where is that guy going? I need to look into that to see if a risk of collision it exists. If it does, who has the right of way? Do I need to steer clear of him, or is he steering clear of me? What is the situation? What are we getting into? So the first step is to determine if risk of collision actually exists. And how we do that is by constant bearing decreasing range. If we don't know, if we can't really figure out if risk of collision exists or not, we're going to assume that it does. So we're going to say, okay, I don't know if risk of collision exists. If it does, what is my duty? What is my burden? Do I need to give way? Do I need to maintain course and speed? What is my responsibility if this was a risk of collision situation? Excuse me. So keeping that in mind, determining risk of collision. And then this goes to our cycle. We want to determine who is responsibility. So who is turning, who is maintaining course and speed, who has responsibility to who. And then we want to actually do something. Okay, if I need to stay out of the way of the other person, I need to make positive, readily apparent, ample time, some sort of change regarding good seamanship, all of the above. And then see if that actually changes the situation. Does his bearing change? You know, is he now crossing ahead of you or crossing behind you? If it's still constant bearing decreasing range, then we need to do something more. We need to determine again, who is responsibility? Did the situation change? If it did, then I need to take different action or take a more ample action or readily apparent action. Kind of all of the above there. So it's kind of this constant cycle. We don't just determine something, make a little move and call it good, and then go down below. So it's a constant cycle. I guess going back on this, for vessels that have a radar, this is typically in the commercial industry, you can see on your radar if a vessel has risk of collision or not, and then you can see, oh, well, if I change course to, you know, if I come 10 degrees to the right, then I'll get my 2-mile CPA that my captain says I need to maintain. But that, so CPA is closest point of approach. So maybe I just changed course 10 degrees and I'll be like, oh, I'm squeezing by him, we'll be fine. But the point of this is to make a large course change. Let's come, you know, 25, 30 degrees to the right, show them that I am turning to the right, keep it there for a while, and then I can adjust my course back slightly if necessary. But you want to really make an apparent change, where a lot of times someone's like, oh, I'm just gonna change course 5 degrees. Well, if I'm looking out the window at a vessel who changed course 5 degrees, I can't tell that they changed course 5 degrees. That's a very hard thing to see. If you're looking out the window at a guy, you want to, you know, have that change in your wake, have your wake bend, you know, have an actual change of course that is readily apparent and someone can see it. If it's nighttime, you want to change it enough that you change your aspect, meaning they see different lights, because it's hard to tell if a boat is changing course at night, because all you're seeing is a light and you can't tell that lights are turning. So you want to change so much that your lights actually change to them. So it's this readily apparent, yes, if I have to give way, I am doing so in a large manner. I'm totally slowing down, not just slowing down a half knot and being like, oh, he'll pass in front of me if I just slow down a touch here. You want to slow down significantly. That makes sense? Okay. Okay, so avoiding collision again. We have kind of these zones, and we're going to go over stand on and give way in a second. But so this one says, I am the stand on vessel, and meaning I maintain course and speed. This guy over here is supposed to give way to me. They're supposed to stay out of my way. So zone 1, before real risk of collision actually exists, any action I can do. I can turn to the right, turn to the left, slow down. Risk of collision doesn't actually exist. Zone 2, risk of collision starts to exist, and I am going to maintain course and speed because that is my responsibility. That's my duty according to the rules. Then we get to this zone 3, and I start to doubt that that guy knows he needs to give way to me. He needs to stay out of my way. So I cannot turn towards the vessel, but I can turn away from them. So I start to be in doubt of their intentions. So I am allowed to deviate from my rule, which my rule is maintain course and speed. So I am allowed to. If you get to zone 4, where collision is imminent, it's going to happen, I must do something. I can turn to the right, and I can, if I have to, turn to the left, which is definitely against the rules. But at this point in zone 4, it's your responsibility to do something to avoid that collision, to not just, hey, I'm stand on, I get to maintain course and speed. You have to do something. So these zones are, a relative thing. Zone 1 might be, I can't say like, this is a half mile, this is a mile, or this is 100 feet, 200 feet. I don't have a actual quantitative number for you. It's just kind of this relative, depending on the situation. Okay, so what do stand on and give way mean? What is the burden vessel, or who has the rights? There's lots of different ways people talk about this. So according to Rules of the Road, the book now, they use the term stand on and give way, but they used to use the term burdened, or someone says they have the right of way. Those are all different ways that people try to explain this, but technically by the book, we have stand on and give way. So stand on means I maintain my course and speed. I am going to be completely predictable. I am maintaining my course, maintaining my speed. I'm not all of a sudden going to stop and put fishing lines out. I'm not going to last minute change course, turn around, or do whatever. I am going to maintain course and speed until risk of collision no longer exists. The giveaway vessel, or the burdened vessel, if you will, they responsibility is to have early substantial action. So that early and that substantial, again, varies. Early can be 5 miles out. It can be 2 miles out. It could be 100 miles, or not 100 miles, 100 feet out, just depending on what type of, vessel you're on. Are you 2 Duffies? Are you 2, large commercial ships? What situation are you in for that early substantial action? At night, you want to see the boat's lights change. You want to give enough action to change those lights. Okay, There's 3 situations when you are in sight of one another. So this means you can physically see them in sight. You have a median situation, a crossing situation, and an overtaking situation. In each of these situations, you have a give-way and stand-on vessel. If you don't know which one you are, assume that you're give-way. So this goes back to the, when in doubt, assume there's risk of collision. If you don't know if you're give-way or stand-on, assume that you're give-way and take action accordingly. So what does these overtaking, meeting, and crossing mean? So I am here in the middle. If any boat is approaching me from the stern, and they're going to see my stern light, that means they're overtaking. Even if they're not on the same exact course as me, we're not parallel course, but they're approaching me from the stern, that's an overtaking situation. If they are approaching me from the starboard or the port side, that's going to be your crossing situation. If they are approaching you head on, that's going to be your meeting situation. So we're going to look at that. For overtaking, technically, we have, it's 135 degrees. So that is the arc of your stern light, if you were curious. But 135 degrees, like split in half. So what is that? 60 something degrees on either side of the, center line, either way. That is an overtaking situation. And the stand-on vessel maintains course and speed. The overtaking vessel can overtake you on either side. They do not have to overtake you on the starboard side or port side. There is no rule on which side. They just need to essentially not hit you to give you, proper space. So use your good seamanship to determine what that proper space is. But yeah, you can overtake on either side. A head-on situation. So the head-on situation is the exception. There is no stand-on vessel. The head-on situation, both vessels have to give way. Both vessels have to take action. And that action is to alter course to starboard. So turn right and pass port to port. So we're going to pass port to port. We're going to turn right on any meeting or head-on situation. If you are in a river or in the Great Lakes, this goes to the inland rules. If you are downbound, meaning you're in a river with like a strong current, if you are going downbound, you're on a vessel with a propeller and rudder, you have less maneuverability because you have less water passing over your rudder. So your rudder is less effective. If you are going upbound, you have more water passing over your rudder, even if you're going slow. So you have more maneuverability. So the vessel that has less maneuverability because they are going with the current or downbound, they are going to have the right of way. So it's safer for them to maintain course and speed. And for the vessel that has more maneuverability, they have to stay out of the way of the vessel with less maneuverability. So a downbound vessel has less water going over the rudder, meaning they're less maneuverable. The upbound vessel has more water going over rudder. Is that making sense when I say water passing the rudder? Because of the current, the rudder is what makes the vessel maneuverable. Okay. Okay. Then we have the crossing situations. So if a vessel is on your starboard side, so it is on the starboard side crossing, you have to give way. If there's a vessel on your port side, they have to give way. Yeah. Again, there's an exception for the Western rivers if you are crossing a river. You have to give way to the vessels that are going up or down the river. You can't, just like you can't cross a channel. Excuse me, the vessels that are in a traffic lane or in the channel get right of way over vessels that are just crossing the channel. Okay, so a vessel to starboard, we have to give way to them. If there's a vessel to port, they give way to us. Or how do other people say it? The vessel to the right is the stand-on vessel. There's lots of different ways to say it, but I think it's easier just to say, hey, if they are on my starboard side, those are the guys that I have to give way to. If there is someone approaching me from my port side, they're going to have to give way to me, but I still want to keep an eye on them to make sure they're actually, taking action, they're actually turning, they're doing something to avoid me. But if anybody is approaching me from the right side, the starboard side of my vessel, I'm going to have to give way to them. So I need to pay attention to the right side and determine risk of collision, and then determine what action needs to be taken, because it's my responsibility to stay away from them. Okay. We just did that one. This one shows our lights. What lights are you going to see? So this is also the great thing about our light system. If there's a vessel crossing on our starboard side, what we are going to see is a red light. Red means stop, right? Red means stop, do something. So if we see that red light, that means they're crossing, and we see that red light on our starboard side, we need to give way to them. If there's a vessel crossing from the port side, we are going to see their green light, meaning we have the go-ahead. Green, go. We get to maintain course and speed. So those are our green and our red side lights really help us determine that who has the right of way. If we see both the red and the green light, that means it's a meeting situation. If I am seeing two lights, a red and a green, that means it's a meeting situation, and we both need to turn to starboard and pass port to port. We are both give way vessels. If a vessel sees my stern light, or I'm seeing their lights from where my stern light is, then that's an overtaking situation. So your stern light is white. If they are in the arc of your stern light arc, that 135 degrees, then that's an overtaking situation. So those lights and how they are purposely built on our vessel really help us in what situation are we in, and how to determine if we're give way, if we're stand on, what's our responsibility, who's doing what.
So do we pass green to green?
No.
When we're meeting, or is it red to red?
It's red to red, port to port. Okay, oops. we're going to go over more of the lights later in this PowerPoint. But does anybody have any questions on the median, crossing, overtaking, stand on, give way, burdened, not burdened?
So like the California voter card, like I remember that really went over like a lot of this. Is that like basically like a basic introduction to rules of the road and safety, just because they're trying to make it into law for voters?
So this rules of the road is the law. The U.S. voters card or California voters card is a brief introduction. So it definitely should have given you this median, crossing, overtaking.
Yeah, it did.
And it did talk about your lights too, right? Where
Yeah.
your lights are.
It talked about powerboats. It talked about lights. It talked about like sailboats, approaching sailboats, which end to go for those ones.
Mhm.
Like PWCs as well. So yeah.
So yeah, again, this PowerPoint might be a little more detailed, just because we're spending a couple hours here. I don't know, maybe 2 hours talking about it versus that power class that you might spend like 30 minutes talking about rules. So it's just a little more detailed, but it's all following the same book. It's not like California voters are following a different rules book. It's all coming from the same place. Cool. Okay, then we have the famous pecking order. So a lot of times, what is the thing people say? The rule of tonnage or the rule of draft, who is the bigger vessel, they have right of way, but that's not technically true. So we have a pecking order of who has the right of way over who by what type of vessel you are on. So you have a vessel not under command, which we are going to define all of these things, restricted in their ability to maneuver, constrained by draft, a fishing boat, a sailing boat, a power-driven boat, and a wing and ground. So we have all these different types of vessels that go into this who has the right of way over who. So let's define these. We have power-driven vessel, that's going to be your most common, meaning any vessel, why do we have two power-driven vessels here? Any watercraft, this should just be a vessel maybe. Any watercraft usable for transport on the water. Power-driven vessel means they are propelled by machinery. A sailing vessel means they're propelled by sail alone. So if you have your sails up and you have your motor going, then you are a power-driven vessel. If you have your sails up and no motor, then you're a sailing vessel. If you are using your motor propelled by machinery, that's your motor, you are a power-driven vessel. So pretty basic if you are power or sailing, but even though a sailing vessel can look like a sailing vessel, they can be a power-driven vessel because they have their motoring. We have a seaplane. Then we have not under command. So that means due to some exceptional circumstance. That's going to be your term for not under command. Exceptional circumstance. So what is an exceptional circumstance? They lost steering. They lost their propeller. They have no propulsion. There's a fire on board. They can't command their vessel. Something has happened to that vessel and they can't, essentially control it or take command of it due to an exceptional circumstance. So something happened on board and they can't steer. They don't have their rudder. They can't, there's no propulsion. The propeller's gone, something, not under command. Then we have a vessel engaged in fishing. So this is not trolling. This is excuse me, a vessel using nets, lines, or trawls to engage in fishing. So this isn't your, just put your lines out, we're fishing. This is what they're doing by fishing is hindering their maneuverability. So they aren't as maneuverable because they have their nets or their long lines out, or they're, purse seining or something, that they aren't as maneuverable. It's not a fishing boat with a fishing pole out. It's something that the fishing equipment that they are using is restricting their maneuverability. Then we have constrained by draft. Constrained by draft is only an international characteristic. So a lot of times that doesn't make sense to people, but it's only in the international rules of the road that the term vessel constrained by draft is used. So that means that, they're constrained by draft. They are in such a channel or some sort of waters that they have less maneuverability because of their draft. Vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. That term we're going to go to is due to the nature of her work. So is this a restricted in her ability to maneuver because she is dredging? Maybe they are dredging a channel, or they are replacing a buoy. I use this a lot in research, doing surveys. By the nature of our work, we couldn't maneuver like a normal power-driven vessel. So we had a little bit of restricted maneuverability because of my work, not because of an unforeseen circumstance that would be not under command. Because of my work, I am restricted in my ability to maneuver. Wing and ground craft. You can Google those. Fishing vessels. Okay, so which ones here are restricted in their ability to maneuver because of fishing gear? So this guy is a fishing vessel. This guy is a fishing vessel. This guy, not so much. That guy, not so much. So they're using fishing equipment that restricts the vessel's maneuverability. That's the key to fishing vessel. Okay, so again, here's a little pecking order. So if we have two power-driven vessels, in that crossing situation, then it's, those vessels to starboard, I'm going to have to change course for. But if I am somewhere else on the pecking order, or there's someone on my port side that is, lower on the pecking or higher on the pecking order, then I'm going to have to give way to those people on the port side. If I'm, a power-driven vessel and the people on my port side are engaged in fishing or restricting their ability to maneuver or something, then I'm going to have to give way to those people. So that's where this pecking order comes in. Typically, you're going to have, two power-driven vessels, but again, there's always these circumstances. So that's where the pecking order comes in.
One situation that comes up a lot are vessels under tow.
Vessels under tow. So does that tow restrict their maneuverability?
Exactly. And sometimes they're towing a dumb barge or a quarry barge, which is a, big barge of rocks, or they're towing a commercial vessel or a recreational vessel. But sometimes the towed vessel isn't visible.
Yes.
And so they are not made aware that a tug would be restricted in its ability, or the towing vessel, because it looks quite maneuverable.
Yes. So it has to be showing those restricted ability to maneuver signs.
Exactly.
Or it's treated as a power vessel. Yes, that is definitely one of them. excuse me. So here we have, you know, a little poem, because mariners like poems, right? Like all of our compass error things, of how to remember this pecking order. So we have only new reels catch fish, so purchase some weekly. That is the most common one. I've heard a bunch of different ones. If you guys hear of a different one, I'd love to hear it, but probably not for this class. We have overnight rooms for sale plus supper. Okay, that's another one. Okay, any big questions on the pecking order, Rule 18? All right. Narrow channels. Again, a narrow channel is not completely defined by the rules that says it has to be, you know, 50 meters across to be narrow, or it needs to be, it doesn't give a quantitative value. It just says a narrow channel. So it is interpreted however you're going to interpret it. If you are in a narrow channel, you want to stay on the right side of the channel. So it's kind of like, you know, driving on the road. Little saying, if everyone stays to the right, nothing will go wrong. I liked that one. You want to avoid anchoring in the middle of a narrow channel. If you are less than 20 meters or a sailboat, you cannot impede a vessel that can only navigate in the channel. So this is where that law of gross tonnage, the law of tonnage or the law of draft kind of comes in. If you're in a narrow channel and you're a sailboat and you're like, hey, according to the pecking order that we just talked about, power boats have to stay out of the way of sailboats. But if you are in a narrow channel and that power boat can only maneuver within that channel, a sailboat or vessel less than 20 meters cannot impede, meaning they have to stay out of the way of the vessel that can only navigate in the channel. And then we have, again, those upbound and downbound situations. So it all goes back to who has more maneuverability here and what is the safest way, right? So we always go back to safety. Okay. So it's a bad idea to cross in front of a large vessel, even if, hey, the sailboat has the right of way, but maybe this vessel, I mean, it looks like Puget Sound, I don't know where it is, can only stay in the channel, then the sailboat has to stay out of the way of power-driven vessels. Okay, traffic separation schemes. Again, these traffic separation schemes are not marked, right? You're not like actually crossing the freeway and it's like, oh, this is definitely the freeway. If there's no vessels, it just looks like open blue ocean, right? So it's always good to know where these traffic separation schemes are. Sometimes you'll have these auxiliary traffic separation schemes for smaller draft vessels. So the main traffic separation schemes for deep draft, and then you have smaller ones for smaller draft vessels. And then it's good to know where these traffic separations begin and end, because that is most likely where you'll be seeing large course changes from large vessels, you know, getting to where they're going. This is, so there's kind of this picture over it, but this is, you know, our area down here in, here's Catalina, there's Long Beach. So we have one in between Catalina and, you know, Huntington, Newport area. And then we have one going up to the Channel Islands. So we just have, you know, two traffic lanes kind of approaching our LA Long Beach harbor. this is an example, or this is a picture of the entrance to Puget Sound, the Straits of Juan de Fuca, that's Seattle. This is actually Canada up here, but you're going down to Seattle and Tacoma down here. There are tons of traffic separation schemes. So again, these aren't marked. You might not even know you're in the middle of a traffic lane, but it's good to know where these are and to avoid sitting in the middle of a traffic lane. They're there for a purpose. So again, they're on the chart like this, but they're not actually marked. You need to know where they are. Okay, so if you are using the traffic separation scheme, you want to know where the end of the lanes are, because that's where the big changes are going to be. If you are crossing a traffic lane, you want to cross at a right angle, meaning you're getting across the traffic lane as quickly as possible. If you are joining a traffic lane midway through and not the beginning, excuse me, you want to join a small angle as possible, meaning you don't want to get into the lane and then do a giant course change. You want to gradually approach and merge into the lane. I think I have a better picture of these. Well, I guess I don't. Okay. Then there is the traffic separation zone. So that is this purple area. If we are looking, on the chart, there's this purple area. That's the traffic separation zone. So the actual traffic lane is, below or above, is on either side of the separation zone. So there's rules for that zone. We don't want to enter the zone, that purple zone. That's the middle of the traffic lanes, not the middle of the actual lane itself, but the middle of each lane, like the divider on the freeway or something. Unless it's an emergency or you're engaged in fishing. So fishing vessels get to go into the traffic, to the separation zone. But what we do not want to do is anchor or hang out in the middle of the freeway, essentially. We don't want to hang out there. Why can't I click on this? Okay, well, you don't want to anchor, you don't want to hang out in the traffic separation zone, and that's that purple area, unless you're engaged in fishing. In that case, you're allowed to, but still wouldn't do it. Okay, not impeding passage of people using this traffic separation scheme. Again, if you are less than 20 meters or you're a sailing boat, you can't impede the passage of someone using the traffic lane. So that goes to, you're sailing over to Catalina and you don't even know you're crossing a traffic lane. You're like, oh, well, I'm a sailboat. They have to stay out of the way of me. We're not in a narrow channel, we're in open water here. They have to stay out of the way of me. But they could be in the traffic lane, the traffic separation scheme, meaning that you have to keep out of the way of them. So again, good to know where these traffic separation schemes are. Just like narrow channels, that pecking order goes away. I think these were the pictures that I was thinking of. You want to stay in your lane. You want to approach at a small angle and merge into the lane. If you're crossing, you want to cross at a right angle, get across as quickly as possible and not, cross in this large diagonal, spending more time in, the wrong side of the road, if you will. And then always maneuver carefully at the end or beginning of the traffic lanes, because that's where there'll be large course changes from other vessels. So they'll be less predictable. So always use caution. Okay. Any questions on traffic lanes? Do you guys want to take a break, or do we want to power through this? Let's take a 10-minute break. I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom. Yeah. Let's take a 10-minute break. We will come back at 8 o'clock. You guys good with that? Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? How you guys doing? Hey, Brett. All right.
I was wondering, this is a little bit off topic, but do they ever teach the electronic navigation online, or is it all in person?
It's in person. It's a really cool class because you go down to the I think you go down to the 3 or 4 different vessels that we have, and you see and you get to play with each electronic navigation system. So you go to Betty, and then you go to the Mia Lucha, and then you go to the what's the big yacht that we have? I don't even know what it is. I don't know. The big one with like 3 different radars and stuff.
Is that the Nordic Star, is it?
Nordic Star, yes. Thank you. So you get to go kind of play with them. And then on the second day of class, you take out the Mia Lucha and you use your electronic navigation plotter to see how things are going literally underway. So it's more of a hands-on electronic navigation course than a theory course. The last day of that week 4 of CoastalNav 2, I kind of go over some theory of GPS and electronic navigation. So I touch on it a little bit, but it's not, again, designed for that class. But it is a really cool class because it's hands-on, and really any boat that you're on, it will probably be a different system, right? It might not be the same brand, the same menu. It's all about finding, navigating that menu and how to get to different things. And that's what the time-consuming part is of electronic navigation. So it's all about using your operator's manual and getting used to whatever one you're going to be using the most of the time, whether it's your own personal boat or the boat that you're going to be working on for the next week or something. So yeah. Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we'll wrap up our rules of the road here. I don't think we have too much more, but let's keep talking about it. Sail. So I'm sure you guys have heard the sailing rules. We have windward versus leeward. So is it the vessel to windward or the vessel to leeward? Under the sailing rules, you have to be under sail. If you have your motor down and you're using your motor, then you're a power-driven vessel. So let's talk about our sailing rules. So again, we're not using power. If you are on the opposite tack, meaning you're on the port or starboard tack, the port tack gives way, meaning the starboard tack maintains course and speed. So if you are on the starboard tack, you maintain course and speed. If you are on the port tack, you give way. So what does that mean? That means the wind, so here we go, here's the wind direction. The wind is on our port side. We have to give way. If the wind's coming over our starboard side, we maintain course and speed. If we have wind direction, if we are both windward, wait, we're on the same track line. We're both going the same direction. The vessel to windward, why am I this confusing? It's the vessel that has, more maneuverability has to give way. The vessel that has more of the wind. So the vessel that is closer to the wind, meaning the other vessel is probably in the shadow of that vessel. That's this one here. They're both on the same tack here. The vessel that has the wind on their side, the windward vessel, has to give way because they have more maneuverability. They have more wind, essentially, in their sails, and the other vessel is kind of in the shadow. If you are downwind, there we go, that's this picture over here. Our port tack is our give way. So port tack is our give way, meaning the wind on the port, or your sail is on the starboard side, meaning the wind is coming from port. If you are uncertain, if you don't know which tack you are on, which is going to be my boat because I'm not a sailor, then you give way. So if you do not know what to do, assume you are give way. Okay. Okay, let's talk about lights and our nav lights and what do these nav lights mean? So hopefully we all know that our starboard side has our green light and our port side has our red light, and then our stern light is white, and then we also, depending on our size, might have a mast light also being white. So this shows that arc of visibility of where we need those lights to shine. And again, these go, hand in hand with that meeting, overtaking, or crossing situation. So let's keep going. Our vessels, when do you have to have your lights on? So anytime from sunset to sunrise, anytime at dark, and then anytime in restricted visibility. So if you are, so typically you might not remember to turn them on when it starts to rain. That happens on the freeway a lot when it's raining or something. You're supposed to put your lights on, but some people just forget. Same thing with lights. So typically, if you're not on a power boat or you're not on a sailboat trying to conserve power, you might just, anytime you are underway, making way, you put your nav lights on. You just put them on and they stay on during the day and the night. It's not against the rules to have them on in daylight hours. You have to have them on, as soon as the sun goes down and as soon as it gets restricted visibility. So you just keep them on all the time. Excuse me. Oh, we're not going to talk about these ones. Okay. our geometry of what we're going to see. So again, at nighttime, if we only see a light, you're only seeing a light. You can't really tell what aspect of the vessel you are looking at. And that's why we have our red and our green light. So if someone is crossing from the starboard side, we're going to see a solid green light. And that, you know, for us means that we are the, why can't I talk right now? We are the go-ahead. We get to maintain course and speed. If we see one from the other side, no, this is wrong.
I think that's what the boat approaching would see.
That's right. That's what the boat approaching would see. But why? I guess I'm looking at this slide in a weird way. But yeah, that makes sense. If a boat is approaching you from any direction over here, they're just going to see a green light. So I want to move the green light down to the thing. If a vessel is approaching you on this side, all they're going to see is a red light. Okay, this makes sense. If they're approaching you in this sector, they see both. If they're approaching you in this sector, they just see white. We're going to fix that. Okay, this is technical, how bright your lights need to be. We're not going to go into that. If you are less than 7 meters, you technically don't need a light, but you need something that produces light, something that you can show that says you are there. So it can just be a flashlight, floodlight, whatever you have. Okay. So this is kind of a cheat sheet of when you are kind of that a different type, you know, you're restricted in your abilities to maneuver, you're not under command, you're, you know, constrained by draft. How you show that you are those things are by lights or day shapes. So this is kind of a quick reference of what those lights mean. So if you see if you are underway and making way, you're going to have, you know, your nav lights. Where's my nav lights? You're going to have your nav lights on. And then if you have this additional thing, if you're towing, if you're restricting ability to maneuver, you're doing something else, you're sailing, you're fishing, you're whatever, you're going to have those identifying lights. And that's what this little image of, but let's look at those. So at night, your identifying lights are lights, and during the day, they're called day shapes, meaning they're, what we see in this picture is they are black day shapes. So you'll be able to see them from any angle. So this is a ball, diamond ball. That means restricted in your ability to maneuver. If you have a single ball, that is an anchor ball. So that's the most common one people know is put the anchor ball up as soon as you anchor. If I go back to this, is just a single ball if you're at an anchor. Restricted in ability to maneuver is that ball, diamond, ball. So it's always good to look at the vessel and see if they have any of these identified marks. If they have AIS, it should say what their status is on AIS as well. So again, that's that being predictable and projecting out to everyone. I have my day shapes up, I have my lights on, I have my status on AIS. You know, I'm listening to the radio, I can tell you I'm restricting my ability to maneuver, you know, projecting out everything so that people can know what you're doing and be predictable. Okay.
What does AIS stand for?
Automatic or automated identification system. So it is over VHF radio waves. And it's literally, you register your vessel with your AIS equipment on board that says it's projecting out, you know, my name. So I'm the, you know, I can't even think of a boat's name, the Nordic Star, and I have 8 people on board. I'm underway making way, or I'm underway restricting my ability to move, or I'm towing. I'm headed to Catalina, so you know where they're going, or I'm headed down to San Diego, so you know as soon as they exit the jetty, they're going to head south. You know, it just kind of gives you some basic information. And it will also give you, you know, course and speed and, you know, bearing and distance from where you are. So that is helpful, but I would say less reliable than a radar, just kind of always balancing all of these information tools that you have. Okay, these are, again, more pictures of day shapes. They can be all sorts of different things. Radar reflectors, similar to the anchor ball. There are lots of little tools to remember all of your lights and shapes. I wanted to find, oh, here it is. This is the one they sell in the bookstore. You kind of move it along to see what lights are what. But there's all sorts of different flashcards, tools, all sorts of different things. So I'm not gonna get into every single one, but it's good to just know those are ways of projecting out what type of vessel or what your status is. Are you underway? Are you anchored? You know, use your lights, your day shapes in an AIS. These are the poems, because mariners like poems, to remember your lights. So red over white, fishing at night. Green over white is trawling at night. White over red, pilot ahead, that's a pilot boat. Red over red, the ship is dead, meaning that not under command. Somehow you can't, that exceptional circumstance, you know, you don't have power or propulsion, rudder, whatever it is, the ship is dead. Yellow over yellow, these yellow ones have to do with towing. So your yellow over yellow is pushing or hip to hip for towing. That means they're alongside pushing a barge. So you have a tow pushing a barge, but hip to hip or pushing. Yellow over white, hawser is tight, meaning you are pulling the barge. The rope or the hawser is behind you. So that's where you have your towboat, your tugboat, and then a big long line to another vessel or another barge being towed. That would show yellow over white. Red over green is your sailing machine. Red, white, red is restricted with reason. So that's restricted because of the nature of your work. And then red, red, red is the rudder is rubbing rocks. That's our constrained by draft. So just fun little poems, but there's all sorts of flashcards and, you know, little doohickeys to remember those things. And again, there's always the book. The book literally has illustrations of what you're looking at. So it's always good to just know where to find it in the book itself. Okay, here's nav lights. We have our red and our green and our white. I guess this is kind of a quiz. So we have our green over white is fishing at night or trawling at night. Okay. Now we have lights and sounds. So lights and sounds, are basically, why do we use lights and sounds? Mostly we use them for maneuvering or warning signals, and that's like a blinker that says, hey, I'm going to be turning to the right, or I'm going to be turning to the left. Like, this is the sound I'm sending out that is, you know, making my actions predictable. I am doing this. These are my intentions. And then we also have the sound signals for restricted visibility to make yourself known because someone might not be able to see you. And then we have our honk, essentially our signal to attract attention. Hey, pay attention. I'm honking at you. This is my warning signal. And then we have our distress signals. I'm in help. I need help kind of thing. So we have kind of our 4 different types of sound signals that can also be accompanied with a light signal. For sound signals, how do we produce this sound? So depending on the length of your vessel is that you might have different types of sound producing things on board. So there is a whistle, a bell, and a gong are the 3 things defined by the rules that can make these sounds. Yeah, pretty explanatory. Okay, so we have our maneuvering signals or our turn signals. Are 2 things that we use is a short blast and a prolonged blast. So a short blast is just 1 second, just a beep. Your prolonged blast is about 5 seconds, 4 to 6, they say. So that's going to be your big, 5 seconds sound. So we define each sound signal by short blast or prolonged blast. Sorry, my dog wants out. Okay, so if we are turning to the right, it is 1 short blast. If we are turning to the left, it's 2 short blasts. If we are going astern, 3 short blasts. And then this is where our rules definition becomes different for inland versus international. The signal is the same. So for both of these, the signal is the same. It's just when we sound it is going to be a little bit different. So internationally, you sound it, the signal when you are doing it. So when you are turning to the right, you sound your 1. When you are turning to the left, you sound 2. If you're going astern, you sound your 3. When you are doing it, you are making that sound. For inland, it's saying what your intention is. And so if you are turning right, my intention is to leave the other vessel on my port side. So that's where, if you look at the rules or if you've heard this before, people think it's opposite, but it's really the same signal for the situation, for the maneuver. It's just when you are doing it. So in inland waters, you can be, I think I'll have a slide of this. You don't have to take action, but you are still leaving someone, if you were to take action, you would be turning to the right. Okay, same thing with overtaking. Why do I have this slide a million times? Inland rules must be answered. You have to be in sight or within a half mile to use it. Okay, so if you are overtaking, again, if you're turning to the right, your intention is to leave them on your port side. You're turning to the left, you're leaving them on your starboard side.
So just to clarify, if you're leaving them on your port, what would your signal be?
If you're leaving them on your port, you would be turning to the right, meaning your signal would be one blast. So it's about you. You know, I'm going to leave you on my port side because I'm turning to starboard, or I'm just turning to starboard. But the phrase of the rules has the word port, so people get very confused. But it's, I'm leaving you on my port side because I'm turning to starboard. But they don't put in because I'm turning to starboard. But it's the same action or situation that you are looking at.
And Bree, I've never heard this. I don't think, do people do this? I think the other people would think you're nuts, that they don't know what you're doing. I only hear the 3 horns when commercial people back up out of slips.
Yes. Typically people do not hear this. So this, you can use the radio. A lot of times if you'll listen to, you know, the pilots talking to each other, they might say, I'll see you on 2 or I'll see you on 1. And that 1 or 2 is referring to port or starboard. So they're saying, you know, I'm just saying by radio, I'm communicating with you over radio instead of using my sound signal.
Yeah, I'm sure commercial pilots, captains do this nonstop. Yeah.
So yeah, typically people are using the radio and not using sound signals, but they're there if you want to use them.
Got it. I'd rather just make my intentions known every time.
Yes, exactly. And I want to say there's a lot of things in the rules that people don't do, right? Like the rules are here for a reason. We're supposed to follow them, but not everybody even knows that the rules exist. People don't follow the rules. And then they get, you know, you tend to get away with it until something bad happens. And then you go to courts and then you're like, oh yeah, that is the rule. I should be doing this. So, but, you know, common practice, if you will, people don't use maneuvering signals. But again, it's like a blinker. If you use it, it should clarify the situation. But if nobody knows what these sound signals mean, then it's just going to be super confusing. Okay. Same with these sound signals. Okay, so international, I'm altering course to starboard. 1 signal. And we are passing. International, if there is no action needed, that this guy will pass us, no action needed, we don't need to sound the signal. So again, the international is when you are doing it, you are sounding the signal. The inland is that your intention of, oh, I'm going to. So inland, again, okay, I'm going to turn to starboard. I intend to leave you on my port side. But even if they're going to pass ahead of us, I'm still going to sound that signal, even if I don't change course. Because I'm still going to leave them on my, as if I was turning to starboard. It's the same result. International. Overtaking situation. So international, when I am turning to port, I sound my 2. I am altering course to port, overtaking you. Inland, I intend to leave you on my starboard side. Same thing. Okay, then we have the danger signal. The danger signal is 5 short. So that's just beep, 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 you know, 5 short. Wake up. This is a danger signal. I'm either in doubt of your intentions, like maybe I am stand on, their give way, and they're not doing anything, or they should be turning to starboard and they're turning to port, or I disagree with what you said, you know, I intend to leave you on my port side, but I want you to leave me on my starboard side, whatever it is. The danger signal is that negative wake up signal that you're sounding. Leaving a dock or approaching a blind turn is just one prolonged blast. Here are, you know, our memory aids, because mariners like our memory aids. Port, 1, starboard, 2 syllables. 2, I'm going astern. 3, doubt. 5. Okay, restricted visibility. So these are our fog signals. How do we let people know that we are there when they can't see us? So always good to know large vessels on using radar as their primary means of collision avoidance. If there is a rain squall or something, they cannot see you. The rain squall completely floods out their radar capability. The radar cannot see through the rain. You have rain adjustments, right, to like try to filter out some of the things. But if you are in a small vessel and it's raining, I would be very cautious of the large vessels because they probably cannot see you. So just keep that in mind. So you want to be sounding your sound signals and listening for sound signals, listening to see if there are anything else out there. And in this case, it's probably going to be raining and miserable outside. And you're like, I just want to leave all the windows on and turn my music up. But that is definitely not listening for sound signals. So keep that in mind. Okay, so if you are underway making way, you have 1 prolonged blast. And all of these are going to be every 2 minutes. If you are underway not making way, so you're just drifting, you have 2 prolonged. If you are restricted in your ability by any means, whether it's, you know, from towing to not under command, it's 1 prolonged too short. If you are at anchor or ground, these are going to be every minute. So if you are anchor or ground, you're going to be sounding your signal more frequently, giving your presence known that you are not moving, you're ground or anchored. And then you have the pilot boat, which is 4. That's the hotel signal. Okay. If you are less than 20 meters at a special anchorage, you do not need to show or sound any sound signals. And that is all of our anchorages in Balboa. So all of our little anchorages, there's boats anchored, right? And they're not showing their anchor ball, or they're not showing their anchor lights, and they're not sounding their anchor signals. But they don't have to, because these are all special anchorages. So keep that in mind on your, so people ask like, well, why don't we hear anything? Well, because they're probably don't need to. Okay, then we have our distress signals. These are the, you know, help me, I'm in distress signals. What can I use? So good to know what those signals technically are. That way you could produce the signal if you need help, or you can recognize it from somebody else if they need help. I think this is it. That is my quick PowerPoint for rules of the road. I know that was super quick, but I hope you guys learned something or are a little more comfortable with collision avoidance. Lisa, you're the lawyer in the group. Do you have anything else to add for rules of the road?
No, most of the suits are towing and commercial vessels colliding or alighting with bridges and docks, and sometimes you have a recreational vehicle. That we had one famous case where 2 people went below and fixed their dinner and then just T-boned a container ship. I mean, on their way to Catalina, just decided time to go and make dinner and put it on autopilot. And it blew up. I mean, that was it. So you have those kind of things.
Yep, you're always supposed to have that lookout.
Yeah. And of course they blame the commercial ship for not knowing, for not alerting them to, come topside and take a look.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we deal with. Right now, there's 68 ships out there.
Yeah. We got a lot.
So, and we've certainly had some go bump. So there've been a couple right now and so they're spreading out more. So it looks like there's more, but Coast Guard's are having everybody spread out, especially with the wind we had a couple days ago. You'll see a lot of them move south, and that was to avoid some of that. No real injuries or anything like that, but smart people out there, but things happen.
Yep, you don't want to get that close.
No, not in those ships.
No. Cool. Well, that's all I have for you guys. If you guys are taking CoNav1, I'll see you next week. And if not, I hope to see you at the Sailing Center one of these days. Hopefully we'll be back in person sometime soon.
Thank you, Bree.
Yes,
Thank you, Brittany.
it was nice meeting everyone, and I'll see you guys around. I'm always available. If you guys have any questions, shoot me an email, whatever. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Bree.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Bye.